Yes, it is. I mean, they are on the different political spectrum, with the D on the one end and the African National Congress on the other hand. I mean, one can also characterize them as center left and center right. But I guess, of course, with the end, I guess, of a dominant party such as the ANC, it was likely that, given where the DA has been for quite some years, rounding at around 20%, it was likely that there was going to be some level of coalition with them. But of course, they've put this under the rubric of government of national unity, including other political parties, as you've just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, I think South Africa had this great hope of unity, full stop, once it emerged from the years of apartheid. Do you think they can put past differences aside and work together?
Look, I think it's going to be difficult because, on the one hand, the DA would accuse the ANC of, corruption and allegations around corruption. We've seen that, and I guess sort of repurposing state institutions to their own interests, whether profit-wise or other issues. And on the other hand, the ANC has accused the DA of racism and sort of market-centered development, which does undermine provisions of our constitution, especially Bill of Rights. So it's going to be interesting, but I think it's going to be important that how they move forward is based on the agreements that they had aligned, at least the more broad outlines that they talked about moving the country forward. And I think if they can stick to that, they would be able to make sure that they can work again with one another. But again, this depends on how the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is able to constitute cabinet. That we are going to have to see in the coming days, or perhaps in a week or so.
Yeah, so the Democratic Alliance will get the vice presidential spot, I understand. Who are the likely candidates?
I mean, the DA quite recently, I think through Helen Zille, was saying that they're not really aiming for the deputy president, but they would be happy for a post or ministerial post within the presidency, because that's quite a broad office right there. And it's going to be, I think, tricky for the ANC to then one, because they would have to also take out some of the less sort of functioning ministers, and they're going to have to put more competent ministers in there. Because part of the agreement is that even though it is the prerogative of the president to appoint ministerial ministers, he has to be able to also engage with the coalition partners on who then becomes a minister, who then becomes a police commissioner, and so forth. So it's going to be quite tricky, because this includes a lot more bargaining players outside of the traditional COSATU, the trade unions and the SACP.
Yeah, and that is a great point you make. I wonder, Thapelo, if this gives Cyril Ramaphosa the opportunity to sort of counter some of those in the ANC that had really held him back in some ways, moving on corruption, moving on those more incompetent ministers.
I think it does, and I think that's a good question. I think it does. It does assist him in the factional politics inside the ANC to ensure that those with less skeletons are able to form part of cabinet. Those with a few allegations of corruption are able to form part of government. We've seen as well the National Prosecuting Agency has been going against those who were part of the state capture a few years ago. And this includes cabinet ministers. So certainly I think it does give him some leg room to negotiate on a better footing, who then becomes part of the national cabinet.
So let's move to what's going to be on the other side of the chamber, and that is the EFF. And now Jacob Zuma has decided to join them and bring over the party, the members that were elected in his party. How much of a disruption could he be, do you think?
Inside Parliament?
Yes. Well, his party...
Look, I cannot... Yes. I cannot imagine that the MK party inside Parliament would behave in the same way, certainly. But I think the common ground that the MK and the EFF have certainly is around the issue that the president may be putting forward an agenda of white monopoly capital, that is siding with corporate or business community. And that obviously may pose a problem for the ANC in terms of its image as a liberation icon. So I think that is a common ground, but I don't think the MK has positioned itself in the sort of protest mode that the EFF has. But we'll have to see how they sort of perform at the level of KZN in the province and the National Assembly. But certainly there is a lot of common ground for them, and I see why they would do that.
Yeah, it is that sort of joint opposition to any sort of return of white sort of power. What do you think the first steps of this new coalition government are going to be? What do they want to tackle first?
Look, I think the sort of low-hanging fruits are around issues of corruption, making sure that those who are accused of it have removed themselves in at least important areas where governance is concerned. And I think part of those discussions has to also be around local government. How do you clean up local government? Because really local government is the front face of government for a lot of people. And issues around making sure that you have proper roads, making sure that you have proper water and electricity are things that are felt from ordinary citizens, and a lot of citizens direct the grievances with local government. So I think that's going to be a second issue. Then going to have to be, I think, as a third priority issue would be the issues around Eskom or electricity, and ensuring that there is sort of a handle over the issues around lack of electricity, because that's a sticking point for many people. But at least those are the sort of three things I think that are going to be quite important, as well, looking at the overall broad framework that they chose as Government of National Unity to work around.
Really interesting times. Thapelo, great to have you on. Nice to see you.
Thank you.